All right, Ian. So you're in the corner booth. You and David are sitting there. This enormous human walks up. So I want to know what it's like to see someone that size, number one, and number two, what happens from there.
So nothing can prepare you for how
meeting Andre the Giant in person.
Nothing can prepare you. You know conceptually that this man is 7'1", approaching 400 pounds, largely muscle. But if you've never been around something like that, it's absolutely impossible for me to explain it. He walks in, he's got a polo shirt on, jeans. He kind of moseys his way over. The entire room gets quiet. What was kind of a bustling room of people eating. It's impossible for everyone not to turn their head and see this dude walking through the room. He's so large. You shake his hand and he's, real nice when he walks up, but his hand, like his gloves, these mitts, they're like grizzly paws. His hand is so big. It is like shaking Max's hand, your 2-year-old. It just envelopes. Your hand gets lost. I tried as hard as I could to make my hand real big, to really stretch it out so I looked like I was shaking his hand, but it's impossible. And he blocks out the sun. You're in his shadow when he walks up. I'm 5'10" and I'm having to look straight up. David's 6'4". He's looking straight up.
Most importantly, Ian, would 10 Glassmakers 4-foot ladder have gotten you above Shaq's head height or no?
I mean, I don't think so. He sits down. I offer him, do you want, we have kind of like a lounge couch or 2 chairs. That's the way it's set up. And he took the chair, but his leg is so long that his foot was directly underneath me. So, I'm trying not to rub legs with Shaq, but his foot is directly underneath me. And I look down at my foot and he's a size 22 shoe. His shoe is more than twice the size of my shoe as I look down. It's comical just how massive this guy is. And not just tall, he's wide. He's twice as wide as I am. He's like a pterodactyl width, and a couple times he put his hands on the back of his head and leaned back, thinking about it, stretching his back. And you're like, my God, his bicep is bigger than your head when he does that, when he puts his hand behind his head and stretches. Just an absolute, why you're around the most dominant NBA force ever that used to rip baskets down. He is just a monster.
Do you remember the scene in The Italian Job? Marky Mark's trying to go buy some explosives, and the dude's this enormous Samoan who weighs 500 pounds, and he tells Mos Def as they walk up, he's like, "Don't stare." And Mos Def's like, "What do you mean I'm not going to stare?" And the guy's got this super long hair, he's enormous, and Mos Def loses comprehension of speech. He says nothing, and Marky Mark's like, "Dude, what the hell?" It kind of feels like you did all this preparation, you did all this stuff, you stay sober, you're in a bar, you're doing everything right, and then this physical being just shows up and completely changes your frame of mind.
It's awesome. It's and that lasted a little bit, but what's interesting, Frankie? So this is gotta be, if not the biggest, one of the biggest sales calls I've ever been on, really, if you want to look at it as sales calls. I don't know how it was billed or how I was thinking, but there's not many bigger meetings I've ever gone to. Let's just say that.
Right.
And, figuratively and literally. And, but I can tell you, I slept like a baby the night before. I wasn't nervous. I was giddy. I was excited, but I wasn't nervous. I wasn't anxious, I'm going to screw this up. And I think part of it, Frank, is just how much insane preparation I did for this meeting. I truly felt like going in there, I knew Shaq, even though I'd never met him before, because there's something about podcasts. When you listen to them long enough, they're very intimate. You start to feel like you know the person when you listen to their voice and tell their stories. And I felt like there was just no way we could have prepared more than we did. I felt like I really knew a lot, and I felt like, and I would also say, I feel very confident in our product and the problem, and that it would speak for itself, that I wouldn't need to sell I wasn't selling a piece of crap product or a piece of crap idea. And I don't even know if I was selling, I was just really telling a story, but I wasn't nervous. But there's definitely that moment in the beginning where you're in awe, and you're not in awe. I wasn't in awe because he's a celebrity. I was in awe because I've never seen another human being that. I met Andre the Giant when I was like 5. I got a backstage pass. My cousin brought me, and I got to shake Andre's hand, and it felt a little bit like that, but I was 5. So everyone seemed big to me then. Like, now I'm a grown ass man, and I still felt like a 5-year-old shaking Andre's hand. That's how it felt.
So the physical piece aside, this is an enormous human. He walks in, the room is kind of agape. Everyone knows it's Shaq. People are kicking each other underneath the table. But this is the beauty of having this meeting at the Four Seasons versus, a Chili's, because at a Chili's, he probably gets mobbed. At the Four Seasons, people are fairly professional, and they keep to themselves. He sits down. How do you guys okay, Shaq's sitting in front of you and David. What happens? How do you broach that conversation?
So Shaq, he kind of led by saying, I appreciate you guys working with Big Brothers, cool. Big Sisters. I love that organization. It's an important organization, and it means a lot to me that you donated there. And then David kind of reciprocated and said, we thought it was really cool that someone of your stature and with your busy schedule would still offer an opportunity like this for charity. And we talked a little bit about the charity, but that was kind of a nice warm open. And we, in our research, we had this 20-page Google Doc that we put together with every quote, every little snippet of fact that we knew about him coming into it. So we had lots of little things where we could use them along the way. But we really gave a lot of thought to what's the best icebreaker? What's the best? And we decided that would be David was a military brat, and so was Shaq. Shaq moved all over the place. He was in Newark. He was in Germany. He was in Hinesville, Georgia. He was kind of all over the place, Texas. And so was David growing up. And actually the two of them were in Germany at the same time. Their dads were stationed in Germany. So both of them had to move to this foreign country at the same time. So David mentioned that. And I think that was a brilliant opener for us, where Jack was like, oh, we're in Germany. Oh man. Okay. And it was, I thought that worked really well. And then we had it set up where David was going to do that little icebreaker, and then I was going to kind of start what was the agenda and lead and take the lead on the, I guess the mentoring session part of it. But it was a good icebreaker. You could tell that it landed, it connected Frankie, but it wasn't like, Shaq was still very subdued. So I guess my impression of him, from everything I had listened to, everything I've heard, everything you see on TV, he's goofy, he's funny, he's affable, he's jovial, he cracks jokes all the time, he's self-deprecating, and he was very kind of stoic. And what we think just happened was, we think he just got up from sleeping, taking a nap. Because if you think about his life, like that night he was going on the air at 9, that game didn't end till 1, 12:30 or 1. He wasn't off the air till after 1 a.m. with the post-game show. So obviously that probably takes time to wind down. He's probably going to bed at 3:30 some mornings. So his schedule is just different, maybe kind of like my dad working in a steel mill, working nights. So we kind of think he had just woken up because he ordered a fruit plate, and he clearly got more and more engaged as it went on. So after David kind of handed it to me, I told him, my son is really excited that I'm meeting with you, but he doesn't really know that you play basketball. He only knows you as Shaq Fu, the legend. And he just started cracking up. I'm like, that's like one of his favorite video games. That's for the first 7 years of his life. The only thing he knew you did was fight crime in the streets in a video game. And Shaq just started laughing. And he's like, and he ended up telling this really fascinating story about the first Shaq Fu and why it sucked, that they had partnered with Sega Genesis right when Sega Genesis was kind of falling apart. And so they rushed it out and it was analog. And so the second one, they did a crowdfund to raise money for it. And that was a digital one. And that's why it turned out to be a better seller. It was really fascinating. We got into this cool discussion around Shaq Fu, and I hadn't really even told David I was going to go that route. I just had a feeling it might connect with him. And then, then we got into the kind of the heart of the meeting where I kind of transitioned that to, let me tell you why we chose you for a mentor.
So before we get into that part of it, I think this is worth interrupting and saying. I think so. You and I have talked a lot about like different interviews we've seen and different interviews we've liked, and reasons why people really land and connect. And I remember you and I were talking about an interview with Tim Ferriss and Jamie Foxx. And you and I were so excited to listen. And I think there's more than one of them. And I made a comment to you about like Jamie Foxx is just incredible. Your comment was like, basically you can put a corpse up against Jamie Foxx because he's so talented. You just get him you give him a softball and let him kind of take it. So I think you're really kind of giving David a good intro here with the military. I think that's smart, shows some connectability. But then I think the second thing you did is you said, this guy's got this enormous personality. Let me just throw something out there that's near and dear to him. Let me make it personal. And I think that's a really good way to diffuse something and get somebody to kind of show who they are. So I think that's quite smart. So you got them opened up, you got them talking, you got some food in them, and then you pivot to the business.
Yeah. So, that's where I say, look, this is the first time we've done something like this. Our business is 2 years old. We chose you as a mentor, and we weren't going to lose this bid. I don't care what the price was going to be, because the more we thought of you as a mentor, the more we got excited about how you could help us at this stage of our part. And here's why we see you as a very good mentor to us. You have spent your life supporting law enforcement. You are in law enforcement. You've been a police officer. You're a assistant deputy to the sheriff of Henry County. You spent time in a car theft unit for the LA Police Department. You are successful in business. You're an incredible marketer, and we're at a stage in our business where we're thinking about our go-to-market plan and promotion. And you've also been an early investor in some technology companies, which is what we are. And specifically, you were very active with your investment with Ring. And we aim to be the Ring for our space and car security. We think that we have just as much runway as Ring did with security in the home. And
so let me ask you something there. So when you brought that up, did he have a reaction? Because like if you watch Shark Tank and things along those lines, like Kevin O'Leary or Cuban are always bashing people like we're the next Uber. Like when you compared yourself, like I would imagine a bunch of tech companies would hope to be Ring. Did he have a visceral response to that?
Nope. Didn't say to that at all. And It was intentional that I said that. I was trying to get his attention that we have Ring aspirations. And if he wanted to pick on that, he wasn't about to. And I think the nature and the brilliance of doing this from a charity standpoint, Shaq's there. Think about it. Shaq's thinking, I got to give $11,000 of value to these guys. They paid a lot of money to spend an hour with me. So I think the last thing Shaq was about to do was crap on me, right? When I need like that. So I think if we had cold called him and had like a 15-minute elevator pitch to do this, he might have been more skeptical. But I think by nature of the reason we were there, I think he was going to be very open and trying to be as helpful as he could because it was for a good cause. And
I think that's I think that's a really good point, Ian. You need to know your audience. You need to know what you're walking into. And I think that's really smart that you know that. Okay, keep going. Sorry.
He says, did you say car security? And I said, yeah, it's a growing problem, especially here in Atlanta and major cities. And, you know, we started this company when David's car was broken into for the third time, and he couldn't find a good solution from a technology perspective. And Shaq's like nodding his head when I said locally. And I just noticed that he was really engaged. And I'm like, you're nodding your head. Has your car been broken into? And he goes, 2 weeks ago, gas station. And I'm like, what? He's like, yep. I went in to get a pack of gum, and I came out and my back window was broken out and they'd been through my car. And I'm like, Frank, it's hard. Like, we put so much time into prepping for this. We thought of every contingency, the way it could start. We thought, what if he says I only have 5 minutes? What if he says I have 15 minutes? What if he only gives us a half an hour? What if he says this when it starts? We thought of every what if, just like you do when you prep for any big sales call. I did not prep for his car was broken into 2 weeks ago. And so David and I look at each other like, holy shit. Like, I've never been in a meeting this big. I've never been in a meeting this big where somebody offered me something that juicy, that fast. So, you know, the only approach at that point is to start asking questions, right? And so it's, tell me about it. Tell me about it. How did it happen? How long did you leave your car? Who were these folks? And he's like, well, you know, I kind of saw some kids, and I thought they looked suspect when I was going in, but I didn't want to profile them. And I bought my gum. And then when I came out, there's glass on the ground, and there was a guy pumping gas, and he told me what he had seen. And I'm pissed at everyone. I'm pissed at the kids. I'm pissed at this guy for not having stopped it, that he just sat and watched it and then told me about it. And, he's fired up. And I'm like, do you have car alarms? Do you have anything in your car that prevents anything? And that's when he dropped this nugget that he owns 40 vehicles, 40 cars. He's like, yeah, I got 40. I'm like, you got any? He's like, no, I don't have anything. And he told us that he had, so he knows Jamie Siminoff, who's the CEO of Ring. And he said he texted Jamie after that and said, do you have anything? What are you working on? And Ring is working on sort of a competitive product. They're going to be a little different than the approach we're taking. But Jamie had said, hold tight, we are working on something. But we got him to talk for a while about the pain he felt. And so then I transitioned it to, okay, if you could have any device in your vehicles to protect it, what would you want it to do? And damn, Frank, if he didn't start describing the device we had in our backpack, he was like, well, it needs cameras. I want to see the punks that did this, because without witnesses, he's like, without witnesses, I'm a cop. There's nothing. You just file a police report, but we're not doing anything. If there's no witness, if you don't have a picture of it, you can't do anything. So he's like, I want pictures. I'd want cameras around my car, just like in my house, that are recording everything that happened inside and outside my car. And I'm like biting my finger at this point to not say, we have that, right. But I'm biting my finger, like, let him talk, right? Let him unwrap the onion. So it's like, okay, what else? He's like, well, we need GPS. I want to, if they'd have taken off in my car, I want to follow them wherever they go. And I'm like, oh my God, he's just describing our device. He's like, I want to keep him just out of my car. So I don't know how you would do that, but and I'm just looking at Dave, and he is doing everything he can not to smile. And we're trying to keep our shit together, because we have a computer with a little deck of, computer renderings of all of our devices, all of our products, a cartoon explainer video that you've seen. We built some custom pictures just for Shaq that have like our little sleeves that we put over the device that have a Shaq jersey from LSU. We've got, we switched the Starbucks cup that goes in the cup holder of our device to a Pepsi can because he loves Pepsi. We did everything unique for him, but we're trying not to like pull it out. And so he keeps going. And then he helps us. He's like, so what are you working on? And it was like, man, I'm glad you asked. Can we open up this computer and show you our device. And we just walked through it. David told the story a little bit and we showed him all the devices, the renderings. And this was like another 20 minutes. He loved it. He's like, this is brilliant. he's like, I love this. Let me ask you a question about this. Let me ask you this. And every slide we'd go to, all the different products that we were looking on, he's like, that's going to sell. That's going to do well. He's like, that right there, I'll buy 40 of them right now. I'll get one for every car. And he's just he's getting more and more excited because obviously if you think about Shaq, he just signed up to give an hour of his time for charity. We could have been anyone. We could have been another charity organization asking if he would do a commercial or come see the kids that are like, who I'm sure he's done this before, but I'm sure he's not run into a tech company talking about their product either. So you could tell he's starting to realize this is a different kind of meeting. Like this could be a nice opportunity I'm walking into because he's getting more and more excited. So that we went through our deck and it went really well. And then that led to some conversations about law enforcement, police departments, and really funny. So he's talking about how hard it is to be a cop. And, he's talking about why the crime of car theft and car break-ins is growing. And he's talking about respect and youngsters and blah, blah, blah. And then he's talking about why it's so hard to be a cop. And he reaches over, David's sitting next to him in a chair, and David's 6'4", 220, and he grabs his forearm. And when I say grabs his forearm, like this is not a small forearm that David has, but all you can see is Shaq's hand. From his wrist to his elbow, Shaq's hand covers it all. So he grabs it and he goes, pull away from me like a 2 out of 10. Give me a little pull. And like, David's face is hilarious. He just looks scared to death. Like, what is happening? Shaq is squeezing my arm. So David kind of gives it a little yank and Shaq yanks him back, kind of pulls him forward. And he goes, that's resistant arrest. He goes, now give it like a 6 out of 10. And you could just see David's wheel spinning like a 6 for me or a 6 of what Shaq would feel as a 6. Cause I don't think I can even do that. And so David gives it like a good crank, pulls his forearm back. And Shaq grabs his arm and yanks back, but this time he slides his entire chair towards him like you were pulling a 6-year-old towards you in a restaurant who was misbehaving. And David's like, what do I do to this? And he's like, now you see what I'm talking about with, and like Dave's like, yeah, I get it. And I'm just over here like, oh my God, my boy is getting manhandled by the diesel. Like he's just getting manhandled by a guy who used to manhandle Patrick Ewing. He's like manhandling him. I'm like, this is unbelievably cool. I think this is great. Like Shaq, now try punching him, Shaq. But it was just hilarious. But he was going through why it's hard to be a police officer, but a device like this could help them because, normally there's not witnesses. It's a little harder to go do something about it. It was Frank, it could not have gone better, all because he's a use case. And everything in our homework, everything that Shaq invests in. So you see him in commercials for the General insurance. The only reason he does General and not Geico or State Farm.
Did you guys ask him that? Did you guys ask him
I know that.
General?
I know all of it. I know of it because I've heard it all in other podcasts. So the reason why he's the General's spokesman is he went to buy like a $1,500 car when he was in college, and they wouldn't let him buy the car without proof of insurance. So he had to go get insurance. And when he did, everyone was giving him insurance quotes that were higher than the price of the car. And then he found one of his friends told him, check out the General. And he went to the General and it was like $200 a year. It was like 10% of what everyone else's was. And so when he got enough money to be able to endorse and he got into the NBA, he reached out to the General himself and said, let me help you. Let me help you because you guys were there for me when I needed you. These other insurance companies weren't. And so that's why he's with them.
That's awesome.
Oh, all of his stories of everything he endorses, he doesn't endorse anything that he doesn't believe in because he cares about what people think about him. So like he endorses Pepsi because when he was a kid, he hated Coke and he liked Pepsi. He, Icy Hot. He has a hilarious story about Icy Hot and a trainer rubbing it on the inside of his thigh and it got a little too high to his to his nether region, and he had to come out of a game because it was burning, and he had and he's like, if that shit works that well, I got to go endorse him. Like everything he does, he has to believe in it, and he only gets involved in things that he thinks can kind of change the world. That's a direct quote from him that he got from Jeff Bezos. He said he heard Jeff Bezos say that, and so he does the same. He invests in Papa John's because he loves Papa John's pizza. He, like everything, Wheaties wanted to put him on their box, and he said no. His agent called and said, Wheaties wants you on their box. He said no, and they said, why? He said, I can't stand Wheaties. I'm a Frosted Flakes guy. And so he never did Wheaties because he didn't like their cereal. So he ended up doing Frosted Flakes. He got on that box instead. So like everything he does, he has to be invested in it. He invested in Ring because someone came to his house, obviously a huge mansion in Florida, and they came around, and he told us this story again of getting into Ring, but I'd heard it on multiple podcasts. But he got involved in it because someone came and gave him an $80,000 quote to put in a security system in his house. And he was like, nah, you get the hell out of here. Went to Home Depot, looked to see what they had, and bought the Ring doorbell, and liked it so much that he had his agent reach out to the CEO of Ring to say, I could help you sell this. And it was only because he owned it himself, and he believed in it. So we knew that about Shaq. So it was so fortuitous for us that he was a use case. He was a person with a problem that our device was looking to solve, because we knew coming into this, we knew he was a high opportunity target because he's been in police, law enforcement, and he's done Ring security. But the fact that his cars have been messed with was really big for us.
This is awesome. So we're stretching into deep regions of time here. So what I think we do, Ian, is this is a cool meeting. We could talk about it for hours. Why don't you give us a couple of takeaways from the meeting? Go ahead. What do you want to leave us with this meeting?
So the meeting ended up going a little over 2 hours, to the point where he was almost late to get to, it was after 8:00, and he had to be on national TV at 9:00 at the TNT studios, or right around the corner. So I think one of my big takeaways, which is the same takeaway I always have, is prep is everything. We prepped so much that the conversation just flowed because we knew a lot of things already, and we knew how he might respond to certain things. So we were able to interject them at different points of the conversation. I think the fact that David took this swing with a startup, and especially one that's hardware where you have to get attention, you have to take a certain number of swings that could go nowhere. This could have been an $11,000 waste of money. But marketing is kind of it's hard to get your arms around, a direct return. Sometimes you have to take different swings. And I think all of our prep helped. I think the way we thought about how we were approaching it, where we were, what we were doing, it all helped. I think it was a stroke of brilliance that it was for charity, because he was very open to listening to what we had. It was billed as a mentoring session. So, and we wanted to get mentored. And worst case scenario for us, we were going to learn from Shaquille O'Neal. He told us all about his time with with Ring, with that device. He told us about how they marketed it, his ideas, what worked, what didn't work, what people liked about it. He had 100 ideas for us on our device. And they were very good ones. He had a lot of different, he's like, look, someone big enough's just going to rip this out. And we were trying to show him how hard that would be to rip out. But for him, anything's easy to rip out of that cup holder, even though it anchors in, because his hands are so friggin' big. So, we had to kind of explain to him, an average human is not getting this out. You just aren't. But yes, Shaq, you could get it out if you wanted to steal something out of my car. That was hilarious. But, I think we weren't in a hurry to sell anything. We really were okay with just mentoring and having a discussion. We didn't act like fanboys. We weren't there asking for autographs of a jersey. We showed him appropriate respect. We had sport jackets on, button-down shirts. We showed him respect, in that we did so much homework that we were able to drop a lot of information about him that there's no doubt Shaq left thinking those guys did their homework on me and my background and why they wanted to talk to me. And then, at some point in any meeting, you got to close. So it was going really well, and it was probably an hour and 45 minutes in. So kind of got to a place where we had talked enough, and I just said, Shaq, I'm not going to beat around the bush here. We want to work with you. How do we partner? And he was great. He listed 3 things right away. He's like, 1, I can help y'all raise money. I can get invested myself. 2, I can help you market and promote it. 3, I've got a big network, and my network is your network now. You guys are, he was great. He was like, I don't invest in anyone unless I like them personally and they're my friends, and I'm going to consider you friends right now. So I want you to know that, and I want to help you no matter what. And I was like, man, I really appreciate that. I also don't want you to do anything for charity anymore. If we're going to work together, I want you to be compensated for it. I want you to feel like this is a profitable venture for both of us. I wouldn't ask you to do anything just for friends. We would love you to get involved in the company. To the point, Frank, where he followed up with, so when's our next meeting? I didn't ask him that. That normally, right? You think about all your appointments with customers, you're always the one kind of trying so hard to close that next meeting, and they're blowing you off and saying, well, I got this and that, call me later. He was like, when's our next meeting? And we were like,
that's awesome.
Tomorrow? Like, when I'm still in town. And he kind of laughed, but it was like, well, I got a lot going on right now with TNT and the playoffs getting through. I need to get through the next few weeks. He's like, but I think the next meeting, I want to have some of my finance people there, my management people, and you could come, we could meet up and we could talk about this, what this would look like. And then his manager walked over, and his manager liked a lot of the products, and he was a great guy. So I think we're going to see if he wants to come over to the office and see a little bit more. But it was, look, we could never talk to Shaq again. I don't know. This is still very early. So this is raw. I'm telling you this 48 hours from when it happened. But we both left feeling very optimistic that we're going to work with Shaq again, and he's going to get involved in the company in a bigger way. Now, what that looks like, we don't know. There's a lot of different ways that could look. So I'm not going to presume what he would think that means. But I have to think that we're going to find some way for him to be involved as he wants to be in the company, because, the next phase of our business, once we have a production product that works, is attention. And that guy could help us quite a bit from that perspective. And his knowledge of working inside of businesses and growing businesses, obviously there's not many people that are on par with him for something like that.
So what I come up with, Ian, is a few things kind of in closing. Is there anything you want to fundamentally add, or can I kind of go into a bit of a wrap?
I think I'll add one. Like, there were a couple of surreal moments. Him manhandling David was one of them. Us joking about Shaq Fu and a few other times where we just started clowning were surreal. But one of probably the most surreal moment of the meeting for me, after he says, when's the next meeting, all of that, he pulls out his phone, which is giant, but it doesn't look giant in his hand, right? So he pulls out his phone, he's holding it, and he opens it up and he hands it to me. And in his hand, it looks like a regular phone, but when I hold it, it's like holding a mini iPad. It's like this massive phone that looked normal in his hand, but then I'm like, holy shit, it's like an iPad phone. And in it is a new contact. And he's like, type your contact information in there. So I type Ian Mathews, Keep Technologies. I type my cell phone, my email address. And he takes it back from me. He looks at it and he goes, you look like an Ian Mathews. And David starts cracking up. I don't understand it, right? And I'm like, what does that even mean, Shaq? And he goes, you'll never know. And he starts laughing. He's laughing at me. And then he takes it, and like a second later, popping up into my phone is a text message saying, this is Shaq, and his email address. So a surreal moment for both of us is, both of us now have Shaq's cell phone and email address in our cell phones, and showing that to IJ was really fun. Showing him that I got a text message from Shaq and he's now on my cell phone. That made my son's day to see that. And another surreal moment when he was talking about
hold on. As soon as he had you program in his number, did you look at him and say, "No booty calls, dude"?
No, I did not. Maybe that's a
that would have been Mark Vanderboy, but that's funny as hell.
Cracking those jokes. I didn't have any jokes. He had jokes for me though on the "You look like an Ian." But like in the meeting, he's like, who would like to invest in something like this? The owner of the Sacramento Kings. Boom, boom, boom. He pulls it up on his phone, shows it to David. He's like, write that name and phone number down. Gives us the owner of the Sacramento Kings mobile number. David's like writing it down. He's like, tell him the Shaq told you to reach out to him, because Shaq is a minority owner of the Kings.
Yeah.
Like he gave us multiple contacts at that level, like billionaires, and said you should contact him, tell him Shaq told you to talk to him. But we're definitely not getting out ahead of our skis on something like that. What we want to make sure happens is we have this follow-up meeting with him and his folks, but it was incredibly encouraging and exciting. There's no doubt.
So here are some of the takeaways that I have for this, right? So David saw this as an opportunity. The first thing is see opportunity where others don't. David saw an opportunity. This could lead somewhere incredible. It could lead absolutely nowhere. But sales, marketing, and branding, sometimes that's what things are, and it's an inexpensive reach for what could potentially be a huge thing. So I think what I hear in that, Ian, is David is so invested in this, as you are as well, but he's so invested in this where he sees opportunity that others might miss, and something as benign as a charity auction. He's like, how does this help us? So the first thing is like, what could potentially be an opportunity? And I think that's a really neat takeaway.
I think so.
The other thing that I'll get into this first, sales. So you can sell too early, but you guys are mired in a lot of technical stuff. Like you're really focused on design, building, inventing something new. You and I have done a podcast before about like jobs and the Apple TV, and like these are no easy accomplishments, right? Like you're creating something new. So to think about spinning plates with creation, but while you're doing that, you also have to keep your eyes open for sales opportunities, because eventually you're going to have to do that. So I don't know if there's anything really to say about it, but it's you people who do startups that are fiscally rewarded in amazing ways. You got to realize, like, you got to do everything. You can't just have one pitch or just be doing one thing at a time. You got to think of, how do I do all of these different things at once? And I think even though you're really focused on the design side, having the ability to go back and also sell is a big thing, even if it's early like it is now.
Well, I think also the deal, Frank, and it's probably magnified in a company that's funded this big, but David needs to be the chief fundraiser. David needs to be the chief legal, right? We're working to get 10 patents. Our intellectual property is going to be a big part of what this company is valued at, because that's our moat. And he's all over that. He's got to be all over the design engineering. He's thinking about production. Where are we going to manufacture this? What country? Which partner are we going to use? Components. He's thinking about programming. We have every different kind of engineer. And you're right, all of that stuff's great, but how are you going to sell it? How are you going to market it? How are you going to, so my role is to try to help him in all of that stuff. I don't add a lot of value on component selection. I don't add a lot of value on programming or engineering, but I can help him with fundraising. I can help him with IP. I can help him with marketing, with sales, with promotion. So my job, his first investor and an equity partner, is to try to take as much off his plate, or at least help him with that stuff and keep him thinking about it as much as possible, because he's pulled in a lot of directions.
To summarize it, I think you need to be compartmental. You need to compartmentalize parts of your life, but you never can lose sight of the big vision. If you guys build the most amazing product and don't sell anything, this thing's a failure. So even if you're ingrained in the building part, you have to also say, we need to bring a product to market. We need it to be sellable. We need to be able to, so people are rewarded in huge ways that invent or are CEOs of companies, but it is not an easy task, and it requires every damn skill imaginable. So you're not a Mad Men fan the way I am, but this entire thing reminds me of a scene. It's towards the later part of Mad Men, and always elusively there's Dow Chemical, and Don Draper wants Dow Chemical. And he forces his way into a meeting. He doesn't use charity, but he basically just says, we're coming in. And they sit in the lobby for like 3 hours waiting. And when they finally get in, the meeting lasts 3 minutes. And what's incredible about the meeting is something that happened in this conversation. It started off kind of rocky. Yours was different in the start, but they pivoted and asked Don Draper, like, tell us about our business. And Ian, he went line by line by line on their business. And this takes place in the 1960s. And Don Draper is very serious. He's there with Sterling, who is less serious. And then one of the guys from Dow Chemical looks at him and he goes, tell me about napalm. And Roger Sterling goes, you mean the stuff the kids outside are protesting about? And Don Draper looks him in the face and he blows off the BS comment and looks straight at them and he goes right into it. He goes, Dow makes it. I won't do this articulately, but the point is, he says, it's a chemical, it's a product that's built, and then he relates it back to the important thing is if our soldiers and our boys in war need it, Dow Chemical makes it. And that's how he did the summary. And what I think is incredible about it is like he took a bunch of BS, pushed to the side, and went right to the heart of the matter. And what I hear in this conversation with Shaq is similar to me. I hear you guys, you were pros, you were dressed appropriately, you didn't ask for interviews, you didn't drink beforehand, you handled the meeting right, you did all this prep. It fell in your lap that this guy had a car break-in. You didn't know that, but you were so ready. And when the moment came, you had everything ready to like. There's a difference between doing research and there's a difference between having it on recall at any moment. And that's what I think that's really set you guys apart is you were in that mode where you had recall, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think we were ready for thousands of questions and you only use 5% of it. That's just how you over prepare and you're ready for just about anything that comes your way and you over prepare it. And for me, a big takeaway of why Shaq is there are lots of really good basketball players that had really incredible careers that have not had such great post careers as Shaq. And one thing that stood out to me, he's an incredibly nice human being. He's just a nice guy. He's big and he's considerate and he's polite and he's funny when he needs to be. He's got incredible emotional intelligence, but I left there thinking there's a reason why he seems to be everywhere and involved in everything because people want to work with the guy. He's just a genuinely nice human being. And even the reason he was there in the first place is because he was giving his time to a charity organization. So that really struck me of he's a celebrity, but he is a real guy. I mean, he is a real guy.
I think the last point I want to make is this. When you go into a meeting or you go into a situation, sometimes we get starstruck or excited or something happens. But what I think you did incredibly well is you looked at your watch and realized you're an hour and 45 minutes into this meeting. This man has a hard stop at this point in time. I came here to close. And instead of getting caught up in the moment, the last thing you did is you literally said to him, you're closed. You've already stated it. Like, we want to work with you. I'm guessing you practiced that in some way multiple times. You were ready for it. And you didn't let the moment go by without stopping the conversation and making sure you said it. And go ahead and talk about that, because I think that's critical.
Yeah, I think it was important at that point. We had all shown enough enthusiasm for working with each other without saying it. I think it was important for him to know that we wanted to work with him. We didn't just come there to mentor. We would be thrilled to partner with someone with his talents. And I felt it was important in that moment. I felt like we had earned it. To me, you only close when you earn the right to close. And I felt like we had earned it by what we shared together, what he had shared with us. I felt like we could add a lot of value to his life. And I felt confident that we had shared enough at that point. So I didn't want to leave that meeting wondering whether he was in or not. I wanted, if he didn't want to, he could have said, "Hey fellas, I love what you're doing. I got too much on my plate for another tech company." He could have said that, and that would have been a polite way of blowing us off. And I probably wouldn't have closed 3 more times if he'd have just said that. I wanted to know, would you like to get involved in our business, period? And I wanted to hear a yes or no at that point, because then we can decide what's next. We can all kind of move on at that point. If the answer is yes, then we have a lot of things we can do. But if the answer is no, that's helpful information too. This was a great time. We enjoyed ourselves. We learned a lot from you, and probably not going to do anything else after this.
But I think this comes back into prep, knowing where you are. What's the point of the meeting? Is this, are we wearing t-shirts? Are we asking for autographs? No, this is a purposeful event. It's really cool. It's a fun story, but it takes it from a fun story to something that has potential because of the preparation, the seriousness with which you took it. And then when the moment was there, because he's an intimidating presence, saying, "I need to do what I came here to do," which is to put this on the table and close and find out, are we going forward or are we not? And you did it. And it led to, it seems to me at a minimum, it leads to at least a second conversation with him. Who knows where it goes from there, but it's at least a second conversation. And if you don't do that close, you don't know if you get there, and you may not.
I'll also just say one last thing. When you say he's an intimidating presence, he is. And I think Shaq knows that. He spent his whole life trying to make people feel comfortable around him that are intimidated by just how powerful he is, how strong he is. And he has developed a very good ability to make you feel comfortable and to ignore some of that intimidation factor of his size. There are moments where you can feel it, where like, this is a guy you would not want to cross when he gets fired up. But in general, his emotional intelligence is off the charts. He has an ability to smile, to tell a little joke, to soft play some things, but he is very good at making you feel comfortable around him, to where you're talking to him and you're not realizing you're talking to Shaq, the international brand. You're talking to a smart guy.
All that being said, but that's another reason that people could lose sight of, I came here to try and close and find an investor or a partner. Yes. So even though he's incredible at that, you can also get caught up in this, but this is part of the discipline.
I think what you're saying too, Frank, is what could have happened is we could have left that meeting without that ending and felt like it was an incredibly successful meeting because we all had fun. And we were all saying a bunch of things. But to me, it's never really a successful meeting if we don't have a next step of what's happening and commitment. That, like, if all we had was fun, yes, it would have been a successful meeting. Because David and I had a blast. But that's $11,000 of investors' money that, you guys don't care that we had fun with Shaq. You would kind of like to see something come out of it. So, yes, I had to pivot at some point to make it a tangible return on what we did.
Yep. That's it. It goes from a fun event to a business meeting because of all the little things. But the most important thing was you earned the ability to close, and then you didn't get either intimidated or out-personalitied to not close. You did the last step, which is the close. And what you teach anybody in closing is if you do enough small closes along the way, the big close at the end is pretty easy. But you can miss that, Ian, and I think that's part of it. It's like, okay, we have direct next steps, and this goes from being a cool story to potentially something more because of everything that went into it.
And what was great is he ended up closing us a little bit too. I mean, he asked us that closing question of when's the next meeting, which is, that was pretty neat. So when it happened, it was like, okay, we're all on the same page. This is awesome. So it was definitely a once in a lifetime thing that I hope becomes lots more in a lifetime after. But one of the most fun 2 hours I've ever spent in business, no doubt.
So, I think what you can clearly admit at this point is my preparation has allowed me to do this close. I think this was a hell of an episode. I'm proud of you, buddy. I think this is really cool. This is really neat. I'm thrilled to see where it goes for you, for David, for Keep, for my money, and Shaq Fu.
I knew you would have to end with your money. It's still always got to be a little bit about Frank.
There's the reason we get along so well. Ian.
Yes, that's why I love you, brother. All right, man. I'll talk to you later.
See you, man.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.